Hey everybody, I'm going to try to record. You can see I'm driving again, which I shouldn't be, but I got both hands on the wheel because I have the microphone attached to my seatbelt cable, and which I'm in a little bit of a snowstorm, so that should help me be able to drive better. But you'll also hear a lot of weird noise. Once in a while I'll give myself a quadruple chin and be like, okay. So anyway, so last week we talked about the 4 marks of God's love, and I know you guys have listened in a little bit when it comes to just some of the other basics of theology of the body. So I wanted to this time kind of just focus on. So I hadn't said this before, but theology of the body. He divides. John Paul II divides it basically into this 3-part thing, kind of like a triptych type. Does this work? If I angle. Good. Is that better? Hey, there's a little bit better. And the first one is the one that we've talked about before. It's the in the beginning it was not so, and which harkens us back to the beginning. And he basically divides all of human history and theology of the body into these 3 parts. So there's original man, which is humankind before the fall. Then there's historical man, which is after the fall, but in the light of redemption. So it's not just like sinful brokenness, but it's in the light of Christ's redemption that he brought. And then there's eschatological man, which basically means end times. It basically means end times. Hey guys, quiet. Daddy's trying to make a living. I'm not even getting paid for this, but I like to yell at my kids. Y'all be quiet back there. Anyway, that's just you can see them. There you go. Nice. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, if this goes over 30 minutes, it's because of them. Anyway, and the eschatological man is end times man. So it's basically where are we headed? Like, where do we come from? What's going on right now? And where are we headed? And with that in mind, I thought I would take just the next 30 to kind of focus on that middle part of the triptych. And so they're all based on these statements by Christ. The first one being that. So the second one, he is referencing, and this is like when you go to a longer TOB presentation, this is where it gets kind of difficult actually, because he's talking about Christ's statement. He's talking to religious leaders, and he says, "You've heard it said, or heard that it's written, thou shalt not commit adultery." And he says, "But I tell you, if you have even looked at another with lust in your heart, you've already committed adultery." And so, like, basically, this was always really, really hard for me, because when it really comes down to it, this is the crux of the matter. This is where he kind of addresses our state of affairs. Because I remember being younger thinking, like, what? I thought Jesus is supposed to be my friend. I thought he was supposed to be understand my condition and have been tempted in all ways like me. And I thought he got me. I thought he understood things as they are. And yet he's coming along saying, no, I don't care if you even did it, but if you've even thought it, you're going right to hell. And I could not really understand that situation. Now, a little bit of a background on me, like I accidentally discovered porn when I was 8 years old. My buddy and I were out in the woods, and this is back before the internet, and so it used to be on printed material, and somebody had stashed it in the woods and we found it. And at like 8 years old, I started to get an education on what love is, how human beings interact, if you want to call it that, what I was seeing in porn. And it was pretty hardcore, it was pretty broken, and it just, not only I was getting definitions of what love was just by seeing that. Oh, this is how people interact. This is what you do when you feel attraction. But then on like an actual physiological level, like without even knowing it, I'm rewiring synapses. Like I'm like forming my brain in these moments that I'm seeing these things. And this wasn't negligence by family, by the way. This was found it in the woods. And so it started to be something that, like, okay, well, then this is how I'm going to love. This is what love should look like, I guess. And you don't know in so many words, but that's what you start to form in your mind and in your attitudes and in the way you behave. So then you get older, I get into high school, and you hear these words and you're like, I don't even get that. That's not fair. Because I used to say, like, I can stop myself from actually committing adultery. I'm never going to do that. Like, I'm in control of my person. I'm not going to do that. But to say don't even think it, like, it's beyond not fair. That's like, I'm just damned. I don't, there's no way out of that. Like, I'm wired. What am I supposed to do? Like, the best I had was to not do it, like, to tell me not to think about it. Like, I don't even, stop, guys. Like, I don't even know what I would do. How would I get past that? And so then Jesus comes along with these heavy words, and you're like, I don't know. I don't think I'm kind of out. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with all that. So, and most of us grew up, generally we fall into these two camps of how to respond to this situation. A lot of us grew up in the one that, like I grew up in, which is basically repression. Like, just don't. You're going to have desires. Don't talk about them. Don't acknowledge them. Don't, for sure as heck, come talking to me about them. You can't talk to your church leaders about it. Like, you just repress. And that is one way to approach it. Now, if you've ever tried that, you know that doesn't play out well. That doesn't last long, and maybe you're just gritting your teeth and trying to hang tight with repression, but it doesn't seem to work. And the thing is, it's not supposed to. I don't know if you've thought about that yet, but God didn't make humanity to have these creatures walking around just constipated looking, sour-faced fools repressing we weren't made to repress. He didn't make us to be in a constant state of repression. That's not why he made us. And so he made us, to let loose, to be fully us, to live fully, to not have to fight all the time. But we have the entrance of sin and shame, and we know what that brought in. That brought into the fact that our biology now kind of attempts to control us, that we have to fight the whims of our biology even. And so that's the state of affairs that we're in, which is broken, yes, but it's where we're at. And so repression seems to be like the puritanical response. Like, well, I don't want to sin, so I'm going to repress everything. And it doesn't work. But what happens is, and Christopher West always talks about Hugh Hefner at this point, what happens is you get people like Hugh Hefner, who he grew up in a very puritanical home. He grew up with no loving contact from his mom, and when sexuality was completely taboo. I think I heard she wouldn't even breastfeed him. There was no I love you. There was none of that. There was no embracing. And so as a result, he's like, well, you're treating my body like it's trash, but it's not. You're treating affection and emotion and attraction like it's trash, and we're not trash. So basically, he swung to the other direction. It was just, well, don't repress, release. Just do whatever you want to do. Just let it go. Don't keep this in, because we are good, we're beautiful, and this is an amazing experience, and we should be able to do all, which makes total sense. If you come from the viewpoint of complete repression, that doesn't work. Well, if it doesn't work to repress, then I'm going to release. That's what I'm going to do. And that's what he did. And he brought us Playboy. He brought us that, ushered in that mainstream existence of porn. Sexuality and porn of all kinds kind of always existed, but he ushered in kind of a different era of just no, here, it's just, we'll put it in your face. It's just everywhere. And it should be whatever we want it to be. The problem is we're not made for that either, because anyone who's ever lived that lifestyle doesn't bring happiness. It doesn't bring anything lasting. It brings brokenness. It brings brokenheartedness. It brings physical brokenness. That's a different video. We don't have time for all that. But it doesn't bring the wholeness that we long for. It doesn't bring the intimacy and the connection that we long for. And so because it doesn't do either of those things, we're kind of left going, well, I don't know what to do then. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with all that I have welling up within me. All of these feelings that I have, everything. As soon as you hit adolescence, especially, when true sexuality starts to force itself into our perception. And so you remember when you're little kids and you play with either, boys and girls play together, you don't even think about it, but at some point, that person you've played with your whole life, you look at them and you're like, oh, hello. There's a little bit of a difference. And that just starts to happen. Well, then it's suddenly it's on your mind all the time, and you're like, well, I don't know what to do with all of this. This is new. And if you have a repression household, if you grew up just repressing, they obviously don't know what to do with it. I'm here, so I know my parents did something, but I can't really delve into that. They're not going to talk about it at church. They're not going to talk about it in like Sunday school. So what am I supposed to do? And if you've lived the release of just like do whatever, then you'll know the same. Like you'll know that because we are spirit body composites, because we are knit, because we are linked, that what you do in the body matters. You aren't just your body, but you are your body. And so if that's true, then just releasing doesn't bring us any closer to the ascending that we think we'll get. Like love promises ascension. Like intimacy promises some sort of ascent into like divinity. That's why like even like in pagan temples they would have like pagan temple prostitutes, because with sexuality seems to promise something even greater and deeper and higher. Well, but it doesn't seem to deliver on it the way that it's been done. So what are we supposed to do? Like what do we do with that? And so John Paul II comes along, when Christ comes along and says, listen, if you've even thought it, here's the problem, here's the crux of the matter. Because he's coming along and saying something to me and to you that sounds so harsh. It sounds like, well, come on, man, cut me some slack. What do you want me to do? I have repressed until I couldn't repress anymore. I'm trying this, free thing of just letting go. What do you want me to do? There doesn't seem to be a virtue in the middle. And I always liken it to this. If, say we're in like a burning building, and we're on the 90th floor of a 100-story building, and it's in flames, and all the exits are blocked, and we cracked a window open and trying to get air, and we're just trapped in this room. Stairwells, elevators, we're done for. And I'm in the room with you. So I'll do what I would do, and I just start running around like screaming and pointing out the situation. We're trapped. We can't get out that exit. We can't get out that exit. We're totally trapped. Because that's essentially what I would do, probably with a more frantic and higher pitched voice, but that's essentially what I would do. And so I'm not helping the situation at all. I'm just telling you what it is. That's basically what's happening. And that's pretty much true to form. And but then suddenly, in the midst of the chaos and in the midst of the smoke and the flames and my screaming and running around, suddenly you hear this voice that says, it looks like you guys are having a tough time there. It looks like your exits are blocked. And you hear this rich, deep voice, and you look out the window, and hovering outside the window is Kal-El, the last son of Krypton, with his Superman, with his cape billowing in the wind. Then the minute you hear his voice and know who he is, he's basically saying the same thing I was saying, like, you guys are trapped. Looks like you have no way out. But because it's him, because you know that he's never there just to say, hey, you guys are in trouble, and then fly away. He'd be there to what? To save the day. That rhymes. Didn't mean to rhyme there. But like, we know if obviously I'm aware it's a fictional character. I'm not saying it's just an analogy. But if that were to happen, then we would know we were saved, because even though the person was saying the same thing idiot Nick is saying, it has a whole different meaning when it's him, right? So when it comes to the words of Christ, which we're passing a massive snowplow right now. Whoa, it was big. So basically what we can know is, and this is what you should know for your whole life, is you are going to encounter the words of God in Scripture often, and you're going to encounter them as heavy and serious and drawing lines in the sand, quite literally sometimes. And when we encounter those, sometimes the words of God can seem really heavy, especially when it comes to the intimate parts of our lives, the parts of our heart that we struggle the most with, that we want to overcome, that we don't know if we're right or wrong, or we know we're wrong and we don't know how to get past it. Like those things, you're going to encounter those in your life, and you're not going to know what to do with them because they seem heavy. And suddenly it can seem like, in the midst of the chaos and the confusion, it can seem like he's not your friend, that he's not on your side. And it can seem that way. But what you need to know, what you need to remind yourself anytime you encounter Scripture that seems like it doesn't understand you, you have to remember that he's the way, the truth, and the life. He's the antidote. He is everything you've been looking for. He only wants goodness for you. And so if he's talking to you, it's only to deliver you. You have to know that. So if he comes to you right now, and by the way, when it comes to lust, we're generally, men, we visual, like that whole general stereotype is generally true. But lust itself is anything that turns something from a person into an object. So, and women lust as well. Women lust physically as well, but oftentimes women, you know what it's like to, like a guy can walk into a room that you would find attractive or whatever. He walks in and you're like, oh, and in like 1.2 seconds you're married, you have kids, you have a great house, he's taking care of you, he's nurturing, he watches Hallmark movies with you, like all of that, like in a heartbeat. And that's just as much a form of objectifying as well. Like anything that just, you don't know that person, A, you might not even like the guy, but B, it doesn't matter how great a person is, they're not yours. And so objectifying, a lust is anything that turns a person into, like we talked about last week, an ATM. So we've all done this. And so Christ comes to us in that, and what he's saying is basically like, well, you're asking about like, hey, can we committing adultery and what? That's like a surface thing. The problem is that if you even think and desire in your heart to do it, you've done it. Well, why would he say that? Because he knows that the issue is always deeper than the question, and he always answers on the level that we are asking it, even if we didn't know we were. He does that with the first one of like, in the beginning it was not so, but like in this one here especially, he's actually answering the question that the heart is asking. Because he's saying like, well, yeah, but I had a friend one time, I was talking about the legality of abortion, how it's legislated and it's legal, and he had said, not meaning to be ironic even in his phrasing, but he said, well, abortion, like the politics of abortion is a dead issue to me, because it's not whether or not it's legal that you want to kill your kids, it's the fact that people want to kill their kids. And that's, I mean, the scriptures say that the heart is desperately wicked, that our hearts, left to their own devices without some form of change, they're wicked. They'll kill anything in our path, and we don't want to admit it. We don't want to kind of address that. We want it to be something else. And so we want Jesus to come along and say, okay, well, don't repress anymore, or we want him to come along and say it's okay to release. Don't worry about all these rules. Just skip it. But that's not the third way. That's not the middle way. Because repression doesn't work, because that's all of your own initiative. You're just grinning and gritting, not grinning, you're gritting your teeth. And then the guys blowing in it doesn't actually help. That's like an old wife's, they have a DS with a cartridge and they're blowing in it. It actually doesn't help. Just a little tidbit for you. But if repressing it of our own accord doesn't work, and letting go, just abandoning to the wanton desires of a sinful, desperately wicked heart don't work, because then, I mean, essentially when you do that, you're just a slave to your heart, which is not whole and complete and is still broken. Well, what are we supposed to do then? What is he wanting from us? What is this, like, Kal-El wanting from us? And basically what he's wanting is you to take the third way. Not repress, not release, but let him redeem. Not repression, not release, but redemption. And what he's saying is, those are two approaches, but there's a third way, is to let me do what he came to do, and to transform and to redeem. But we don't actually, like in our sin, we don't want that. We're like, no, I would rather you just tell me it was all okay, or actually fine, just let me repress the sucker, let me just push everything down and not have it be an issue. The problem is that, again, you're not made for that. You weren't made to live that way. That's not life. You're not actually, he doesn't want you to just restrain your whole life. So what does that look like? Well, there's an analogy that Christopher West always uses about flat tire syndrome. Like, say you're born into a culture that everybody drives around on cars with flat tires, and so like, you're always struggling to drive and you're straining, you can't go in a straight line, and someone comes along and is like, hey, did you know that that the cars, they used to have air in the tires? Like, you can just fill up these tires and just drive. Like the liberation that would happen if you were now clean and easy driving would be. That's basically what Christ wants to do, is come along and just say, well, let me put air in your tires. Let me fix you. Let me fix you. But the reason that's scary is because the things that we have inside, the darker parts of us, we don't want to acknowledge that they're real. We don't want to acknowledge that we're terrified. No, okay, because if God comes along, he's going to change me, and then suddenly I'm not going to want to, whatever. I'm not going to, like, A, I'm going to be like this drone. I'm not going to desire. But B, he's going to come along, and I'm going to change the way I behave, and then I'm not going to have anyone in my life. I'm not gonna be able to be like physically like I was before. I'm not gonna be able to act like I did before, and I'm gonna lose all my friends. I'm gonna lose, and no one's ever gonna love me, and I'm just gonna be alone. And that's a fear. And the perfect love casts out fear. We get afraid, like, oh well, then I'm just gonna become this like an icon, like a fake picture of a saint. Like I'm just gonna become like this callous, unfeeling. Like no, I want to love. I want to be intimate. I want to, like, we get afraid of those things. And the problem is, those are just dark parts inside of us. Those aren't based on any reality. God doesn't want to do that. God doesn't want to make us passive and boring and neutral. But so there's a passage in Scripture where Jesus' friend passes away. Lazarus dies. And so Jesus is days late getting there. And he walks into town and shows up, and he grieves. He weeps with them. Because the death separates the spirit from the body, and that was never intended. And he weeps. It's the shortest verse in Scripture. Jesus wept. He weeps, and then he tells them to roll the stone away. And it's a very interesting response. They say, "No, Lord, we can't. There will be a stench." He's been dead for days. We're not going to roll. He's decomposing already. We're not going to roll it back. In their culture, they would have been unclean for approaching the dead body and whatnot. And so Christ approaches us with our hearts. He says, "Hey, will you roll your stone away? Just roll your stone away. Let me in." And we say, No. There's going to be a stench. I can't let you in there. And that's the problem. There is the broken, cracked, dead, stale heart that we don't want him to come near. But what you have to understand, again, with the words of Jesus, what he's saying is, listen, great. I'm glad that you never physically committed adultery. I'm telling you that it's not just whether or not you physically gave into something. It's if you desired it in your heart. That's the issue. The desire is the broken. The desire is the broken part, and that's what I want to fix. That's what I want to come to. That is where I want to reach in and change. Is that desire? I want you to desire what is best for you, and then you will be happy, and then you will be fulfilled. And he has to be allowed in. And so for you, the challenge is this week, well, every day of your life, is to let him in. Is to say, okay, all right. Even if it means I end up alone, which you won't, because he's the one you're looking for anyway. We'll cover that at some point. But even if I end up alone, even if I'm rejected, even if he or she breaks up with me, even if I don't know what my next step in life is then, regardless, I know you only want to bring hope. You only want to bring redemption. You only want to fix and heal and transform. Then I'll roll away this stone and I'll let you in. And you can pinpoint the parts of me that need to change, and then you can do the transforming, Jesus. Because I can't do it on my own. I'm either going to just hunker down and repress, or I'm just going to let loose. And I'm going to let you instead do what you came to do. And that's the challenge then. That's it. And especially since, this is right now, I'm recording this on the first Sunday of Advent. On the first Sunday of the celebration of Christ coming, and he's on his way to us, we can know that the reason he is coming, the reason he came, the reason we celebrate Advent is so we don't just, Christmas Day and then move on. We celebrate Advent because we anticipate and like hearken to and put our hearts to and put our minds to, weighing the fact that he came to deliver. He came to set free, to roll away every stone and to conquer death itself. And he came to do that in your life. And the thing is, that can just start now. That's a decision you make now. You make it over and over and over because, like the deeper it gets into our hearts, we realize, oh wow, I didn't know. But like, this just begins with that statement, oh, I didn't know. I didn't realize that I thought you wanted to come and either steal my fun, or I thought you wanted to come and be mad at me for the sin that I've committed already. I didn't know that you just wanted to set me free, that you just wanted to show me what real love looks like. I didn't know you wanted to put air in my tires. I didn't know, and now I do. And the beauty of what happens is this, and I can say this again, I established, I think in the beginning, I was wired differently. I was wired broken. I was miswired because of what I had seen and what I had allowed myself to become addicted to in my life. I can tell you firsthand the emptiness, but I can also tell you 100% firsthand what it's like to stand on the other side of that, to stand on the other side when you've allowed him in, and you're like, I didn't know that I could feel this. I didn't know I could see this way. Prior to what lust did to me is I couldn't walk into a room and see women for who they were. I couldn't do it. And if you get a male who is honest about his lust, that's what lust does. It appropriates, it objectifies. So you walk into a room and you just see body parts, and you just see attraction or not attraction, like a yes, no. And what I didn't realize is that that's not life, and you don't have to be that way, because you can actually have that transformed and healed. And regardless if you've been the one who's allowed yourself to be objectified, or if you've done the objectifying, or if you've been on both sides of that, if you've been the luster and the lusty, all of that brokenness can be healed. And it can be healed. It's simple, not easy. It's very simple. You just decide, okay, every time I feel this well up inside me, every time desire hits, every time lust hits, every time I grasp at affection or attraction or compliments or this relationship or whatever I usually grasp at from people, every time I do that, I'm going to say, no, that's a dark tomb, that's a rolled over stone, and I'm going to roll it away. I'm going to allow Christ in there. And that's the beauty. What you can do is, in the moment, like, you don't have to wait till you can get to church or to confession or whatever. In the moment of brokenness, you can just, and there's a wonderful prayer Christopher West often gives, and I'm probably getting some of the wording wrong, but it's just in that moment. It's a prayer in a moment of sexual temptation. You can just pray in that moment. Even that, like, praying in that moment is allowing him into this dark moment that we would normally hide. And in that moment, whether you find yourself online clicking or on your phone or whatever, or you find yourself with somebody and being what you know you're not even meant to be, what you know is wrong, then in that moment you allow him into that. You let him in to that moment, and this is the prayer. You say, Lord, you begin, Lord, which allows him in, and then you say, thank you for the gift of my sexual desires, which does, so that acknowledges what is good about them. Thank you for that gift. Thank you for making me someone who has desire and who desires intimacy and sees beauty and all of that. That's wonderful. Thank you. So just please, in this moment, untwist in me what has been twisted by sin. I mean, that's the base of it. Thank you for the gift of sexuality. Thank you for the gift of this life in this body that you've given me, be it male or female. Thank you. And in this moment, please just untwist in me what has been twisted by sin. And so we can pause there. The challenge, and this is, there are plenty of issues that I'll address, in further videos towards the end. We're building some building blocks here before we can talk on any same platform. But that prayer, that means, and this is for you to know, you have to be prepared as a Christian to recognize that there will be a great deal about you that you were wrong about. And that's not just theological, it's not just political, it's sexual as well. There are a great many things that we are wrong about, but we want them because we want them. If you've ever felt like, well, if God ever approached me with this and told me this was wrong, then I'd rather be in hell than to let go of it. I've heard people say that, especially when it comes to sexuality. Well, if what I'm doing is wrong, then I'd rather go to hell. And that's a very telling statement. That's fine if that's not fine, but I understand people get to that point. I get that. But if what I don't get is, if we are children of God, we're all God's children, and if that is true, then you, on like the deepest of levels, you have to be willing to admit that then you're the child and he's the ever-loving Father who also spoke the world into existence and who also can't desire anything bad for you. And if there's ever anything that you've gripped so tightly to that you're like, if this was ever between God and this, I'm choosing this, that's terrifying. That's a terrifying place to be. Because it's just, for me, it's just like an utter lack of humility of just saying like, you know what, I'm probably wrong on a great many things, and I would like to know what those are. That's basically, in a time of sexual temptation, of lust, just saying, hey, thank you for the gift of this humanity and for desire and all of this. I'm recognizing now that you have said whatever I'm engaged in is wrong, or what I'm tempted to do is wrong. Please just untwist this. Please, God, Please, Jesus, please, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, fix what is broken in me. And the thing is, because he's real, then he does it. Because God is real and his love is real, he does it. He transforms you. He begins to change you so that, like, I can't express to you the feeling of aliveness that I have in living that lifestyle. In living a life that in each moment of sin attempts to let God in. And just says, here, this is what I did. This is the brokenness. Please take it. It's yours. Just do with it what you will. And then you find healing upon healing upon healing. And you feel like not only am I living, like I am flying. I am running. And it comes from that first act of just rolling away the stone and admitting, yep, in my heart, in what I have done and what I failed to do, I have sinned. I have greatly sinned. And allowing him in to transform you in that. So that's what I would say. That's the challenge this week, is to roll away the stone and just let him into those dark parts of your heart that you can't seem to handle on your own. And he will. And we'll see you next week. Have a good life. See you on the other side.